The economy of Sri Lanka. Oh, what a mess those who have been in charge have created. Now, we all know about the mess. We know the troubles we are in. We feel the pain. We can feel the pressure. But what about the recovery, the rescue plan? Basic economics always say that the economy goes in a cycle. You might have the recession and a trough, but then afterwards comes the recovery and the boom. But how do we really get there? Who has a recovery plan for this? Does Sri Lanka have a rescue plan? Today, in Bisnomics, in your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes, we will be discussing with someone who has drafted a rescue plan for Sri Lanka. What does he think that we need to do, and what are the options for the economy? So do join me in welcoming today's special guest, who is none other than Mr. Ranjith Wickramasinghe, an independent financial advisor. Mr. Wickramasinghe, absolute pleasure to have you with us, and welcome to Bisnomics.
Thank you, Taranju. Thank you for inviting me to this prestigious Bisnomics program.
Well, it's a pleasure and honor to have you with us, sir. So let me get straight to the point. From a pure economic viewpoint, Mr. Wickramasinghe, what landed our nation, this resource-rich, skills-rich nation, into this hot mess that we seem to be unable to get out of?
Yeah. Let me, the way I see, provide you the dimensions of this mess. Basically, our foreign reserves usable is down to zero. Now, if you go back to post-war 2010.
So safe to say it's down to zero, and that we don't have anything.
No. I mean, we don't have. I mean, they may be showing book figures, but actual usable reserve is zero. Okay. If you go back to post-war 2010, our foreign reserves were $8 billion, which would have been enough to make 8 months of imports. And thereafter, the next major milestone is the Easter Sunday attack in 2019, at which point we had $7 billion, equivalent to 6 months of imports. So now we have zero usable reserves. So that's one of the major dimensions of this mess. Then getting back onto debt, we have a foreign debt of $60 billion, and post-war in 2009, our debt was $18 billion. So our debt has increased by 3 times, 300%. Now let's compare our economy against this debt. Our economy in 2010 was $57 billion. Today our economy went up to $84 billion, came down to 80, right? So basically the movement of the economy is only 30%, whereas your debt has gone up by 300%. So that's a huge issue. Then the other problem with debt is the composition of debt. Now today we have 50% commercial debt, which is very expensive debt.
Borrowed at the market rates.
Market rates, probably between 6 to 8% sometimes. Whereas in the past, we had 90% concessionary debt, which probably in some cases may have been 1% interest. So, and of this debt composition, the bilateral debts, probably we hold 10% with China, almost 10% with Japan, and with some of the big multilaterals like ADB and World Bank, 15%, and India has been helping us quite a lot recently, so they are also coming up to a fairly large chunk.
But we did borrow from Bangladesh as well, I believe, and so many other countries.
Yes.
I do have a little question here. In fact, this is a question that the public wants to know, Mr. Wickramasinghe. Now, if a country borrows so much, there has to be some amount of development happening. Compared to what we have borrowed, we don't see that development at all. Clearly, it is very fair for people to assume that these borrowings were actually, or a majority of it, were stolen by the authorities, by the politicians in charge. I don't want to get into the details of who stole what. I think you know that, I know that, the whole country probably knows that. But is that not a fair assumption for the people to make, that this money has been, or a good portion of this money has been stolen?
Well, actually, I initially said the debt has increased by 300%, whereas the economy has only grown by 30%. So there's a huge problem. So I think those numbers
Don't lie.
don't lie, tell you a story. Definitely.
Absolutely.
The next one, the important thing is that because of this debt, our annual debt repayment has gone up to $7 billion, right? And of which I would reckon the interest component is almost 2 billion. And that's a huge amount for a country to pay. Then the other problem that we have is that we have been having a persistent trade deficit.
In the BOP, in the balance of payment current account.
Yeah, I mean your exports are 12 billion right at the moment, and the imports are running at 20 billion. So we have a deficit, a trade deficit of 8 billion.
Correct.
And this has been going on. This didn't happen yesterday. It's been going on for decades.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it was in the 1970s that we last had a like a trade surplus. I think after that it's always been at a deficit rate.
Yes, I think I was a young boy during Dr. N.M. Perera's time as a finance minister. I think he did have a surplus. I think since then we haven't had any surplus. So it's a major issue. I mean, you cannot stabilize your foreign exchange with this huge growing trade deficit. Then the other issue is that our two other sources which were financing this trade deficit was the income from tourism. We were getting about $4 billion, and now with COVID, it's come down to almost nothing or $500 million, you know. And the other area was the expat remittances from the Middle East and the rest of the world.
And due to the artificial controlling of the exchange rates, people are now reluctant to send it through the official channel.
Yes, that is also there. But I think to a certain extent, COVID also affected the movements of it. So we were at 8 billion, now it's down to about 3 billion. So we have a balance of payments issue. See, if your trade deficit is 8 billion, and from these two sources of tourism and expatriate income, we get 4 billion. We have a 4 billion deficit on balance of payments.
Absolutely.
And that is without paying debt. So basically,
just to survive, we are just to survive in spending to survive. We have that deficit.
Correct. And you see, so we are unable to pay this debt, and I think this was recently confirmed when the governor of the central bank declared that Sri Lanka is unable to service the debts anymore.
Correct.
But I think this decision has been delayed. This should have been done much earlier.
Correct.
And also I think the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka also has announced that the treasury is empty. There is no money.
Very precarious situation to be in.
So when you don't have money in the treasury, you cannot establish a letter of credit. So everything has to be bought for cash. So that's the reason why you see all these ships, you know, hovering around the harbor.
And some ships are turning back as well.
And they are not discharging the cargo that they brought until the money is paid. So they need to be paid in hard currency.
Correct.
So we cannot establish a letter of credit. So I think this is a real issue. I mean, now this is from the external economy side. But I think from the internal economy, we have a widening fiscal deficit on our annual budget. Today, I think according to the figures that was reported in the Parliament by the Prime Minister when he was presenting the supplementary budget for this year, it's something like 13%. I mean, it's very, very difficult. So this deficit has been there for the last 10, 20 years. It's been growing, 6%, 7%, now we are at 13%.
Correct.
So what has been happening is that we've been financing these deficits through borrowings. And unfortunately, we borrowed foreign funds and financed local deficits.
Understood.
That is another issue that is crippling this.
Correct.
And that's why the debt is ballooning.
Absolutely.
So,
Mr. Wickramasinghe, I want to get to the rescue plan which you had. I think
okay.
you set the stage for the mess we are in. It was very
Yeah.
detailed and insightful. The rescue plan.
Okay.
Tell us more, because that's what makes you unique. Everyone talks of the problem. Very few people openly talk of a solution. Share your rescue plan with us.
Yes, I think I mean, today, you know, we are stuck. We can't move. So, the first thing is to rescue us from that situation, which means we need an injection of money, right? I think according to my plan, we need bridging finance of $5 billion for the first 2 years. Now, you can't just ask for money. You also need to show how you are going to stabilize your trade deficit.
Correct.
So, which means we need to raise our exports from the current 12 billion almost to 30 billion in 5 years. Right?
30 billion.
$30 billion. And we probably have to tinker with our imports. You know, we cannot do what we did before, right? You know, those days we could go into the showroom, take your checkbook and buy the best Mercedes. Or you go into a Barnes and buy the biggest TV. Or you go and buy the biggest iPhone, right? Nobody ever thought from where this money was coming. We were all happy, so we are all responsible for this mess as well. So I think there has to be some kind of rationalization on the imports. I'm not saying that the imports have to be controlled fully.
Correct.
But in the interim, you may have to.
Correct.
But as you progress, you release those restrictions. So probably, I think the imports can, within the next 5 years, could be curtailed and could be below your 30 billion exports. Now, to get a $30 billion exports, you need a burst of development. We don't have time. So we need to find areas where we can get a burst of development and quick returns. Now, I have been looking at the strengths of Sri Lanka, and one of the biggest strengths we have is the sea. Our sea area.
3 times the land area of our
8 times.
8 times.
8 times, because we have an exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical miles right across Sri Lanka, but on the northern side we have to share it with India. But you know, on the other side is all ours. So basically, you know, all my in the plan, the projects that I have planned are mostly in the sea. For instance, Colombo port is one of the best ports in the world today, and we are only doing 7 million TEUs, whereas Singapore is doing 40, and China, some of their ports are doing 40, 45. Right, so Sri Lanka is feeding this entire Indian subcontinent. India at the moment does not have deep ports like the port we have. So the entire transshipment cargo, right, could be sent from Colombo. So we have to expand the South Harbour.
Understood. Mr. Wickramasinghe, we are going to take a quick break and join you back. Stay tuned. We will be back with this very interesting discussion after the short break. This is Bisnomics. Welcome back to Bisnomics, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. We are in conversation with Mr. Ranjith Wickramasinghe on a potential rescue plan for our economy. Mr. Wickramasinghe, you were mentioning about the opportunities that the ocean economy presents for Sri Lanka as a way of recovery. Please do continue.
Yes. So basically, you know, if you extend the South Harbour, and the infrastructure investment cost is just $500 million to extend the breakwaters. Rest of the terminals will all be done in as investments on a public-private partnership, exactly the way it's being done at the moment. And also you can get you can double your output, you know, within a matter of 2 years, and triple it within a matter of 4 years, and probably take us up to 25 million TEUs by setting up the North Harbour. Now again, the investments in this area are just the breakwater costs. So together these two breakwaters will cost you $1.5 billion. But you can generate a foreign exchange income of $4 billion. annually. And that can be done pretty soon because the cargo is there. It's a matter of grabbing the cargo. Because
And today the world needs ports because there's a massive glut in, or rather there are lots of supply chain shortages and bottlenecks.
Correct. So the cargo is there. We had to go and grab it. It's a competitive business. Now at the moment, all that cargo is going into Singapore or to Dubai or someplace. So it can be attracted here. Now, just to give you a dimension, after 200 years, tea is giving us $1.3 billion in foreign exchange. Now here, these ventures can bring you an additional $3 billion.
But Mr. Wickramasinghe, every time that there is an effort to start a project or maybe to get an investment and start a port or a terminal, then comes the rhetoric, oh, we are selling our national assets, they are selling Sri Lanka, etc. But I believe what we need to understand is no matter from where the investment comes, it's a partnership. So, and the revenue that comes in, they might take a certain amount of profit, but the revenue, the dollars come into the country first. Am I right?
Yes. And actually, I think I need to make a correction here. Now, this is reclaimed land. We are building on reclaimed land. We are not trespassing or taking the land of the people. We know it. The human-elephant conflict says that the land is limited. But none of these projects are taking the land away from the...
We are reclaiming and building artificial land and then building.
Correct. So you're not causing any inconvenience to the inhabitants of this country.
Is it the powerful unions that make the fuss on this? Because we did see certain concerns with regard to the Eastern Terminal, etc.
Well, you see, I was the chairman of the Ports Authority when we structured the first privatization in the port, the SAGD terminal.
Correct. And today it's seen as one of the most successful PPP ventures.
Correct. It has world accolades. And I can tell you, when that project was started or discussed, I was the only guy as a chairman who was for it. Even my managing director was opposed to it because they were all unhappy to bring in outsiders. But you have to talk to people. You have to persuade them. There is fear for change. If you talk to them and explain to them, then they will agree. I actually have held more than 20 pocket meetings going from one area of the port to the next area to explain to the people, what we are trying to do. And finally, everybody said, fine, go ahead. Because I told them, if you do not open up, I can't pay the salary that you deserve to be paid. You're one of the best engineers in Sri Lanka. You're a chartered engineer. But you're not getting paid properly. The only way I can pay you, right, is to get a new investment, right, and follow that investment. So, as a result, now everybody in the port benefited finally from it because the pay has gone.
Correct.
Because you have more earnings, then you have more pay.
Absolutely. Mr. Wickramasinghe, do you think we have made any steady strides or progress towards a sustainable debt recovery program in the country? Because we hear the talk about IMF and we hear that they also want to see a proper sustainable debt recovery plan. Do you see any efforts being made by the government right now? If not, what do you think needs to be done?
Well, I have not seen any debt sustainable program done by the government. They have not publicized anything. But there were two announcements which were very cardinal, where the governor of the central bank declared that he is unable to pay the debt, service the debt. And the Prime Minister of this country said the treasury is empty. And after that, there had been no other signals coming in. The fact of the matter is that this debt is unsustainable. How do you sustain a debt when your economy has only grown 30% and when your debt has grown 300%? So, which means, you can only repay the debt by proper investment and that investment getting a return, and then you are repaying the debt. So at this moment in time, our debt is not sustainable at all. I would say, according to my plan, we need the injection of $5 billion for 2 years as bridging finance. We are unable to pay the debt, but in the 4th year, 5th year, we will achieve a trade surplus, and from that point onwards, Sri Lanka will be able to sustain it, but not in the medium term.
Understood.
So, in my view, our debt is not sustainable. I think the IMF says, come up with a plan
And we'll support
where the debt is sustainable. The World Bank says same. So I don't know. Now, these figures that I have presented, this is a published document. My rescue plan is a public document. I see no way.
So we have nothing and nothing is being done about it.
Yeah. Now, on my own, I have researched into the ocean. You know, Sri Lanka is situated in the middle of the great east-west shipping route. This is the oldest shipping route in the world.
A very strategic location.
Yeah. And all these ships are passing through Dondra Head, just 8 miles away, you know, just outside our territorial waters, but within our economic zone. Now, according to my research, 30% of the world trade passes through this point.
For a year.
For a year. Every year, 30% of the world trade passes through, and these are carried by 45,000 ocean carriers and 45,000 air carriers. Right. So every 6 minutes, there is a movement. You and I, we are all sleeping, but this is happening. They don't stop here. They do a beeline from Dubai to Singapore or the other way around, and we get nothing. So I was just trying to find out, if we don't get anything, what do they get? I did a calculation because I'm a shipping man as well. I was the chairman of the shipping corporation also, as well as the chairman of the Ports Authority. And being an accountant, I always like to look at the numbers.
Yes.
So I just did a calculation. See, they're just cutting through like that. But if they're going round our 200-mile zone,
Yeah.
if they were to do that, they would have to do extra 400 miles of sailing. Now, these big ships,
Big fuel.
you know, need about almost a day. They do about 20 knots, right? They need a day. So they save 1 day for each crossing.
Safe to say global trade, 30% of global trade saves 1 day due to us.
Yes.
Thanks to us.
Yeah, and I translated that into monetary terms, right? So on a single day, if they save on sailing, they save 200 tons of heavy fuel oil. That's what they burn for a day. And today, a ton of fuel oil is $1,000, right? So 1,000 into 200 into 45,000. That's $8 billion. And similarly, you do your numbers for the aircrafts. And so they save about $10 billion in terms of direct fuel and the operating costs, because you need to man the ship. So if you save 1 day, you save 1 day of operating costs. And these big ships charge you about $150,000 to charter for a day.
Correct.
Right. So the numbers are that. And you know, they are all this is feeding the world supply chain, right? The biggest global retailers are Amazon. They are about number 3 in the world. It's all their cargo that's going on this. This cargo that is going on the ship gets stuck into a supermarket, and when they save 1 day on transit, their inventory cost also comes down.
Absolutely.
Right. So I would say conservatively, the global economies had gained $100 billion over the last decade. But this has been happening for centuries. So, but let's talk about the decade.
Correct.
So the global economies have gained $100 billion, and we haven't got a cent.
So we should be providing services where they will want to come to Sri Lanka for those services, etc.
Well, yes, but it will be very difficult because they are so huge. You just can't stop. When you a day stoppage, it will cost you a lot of money.
Correct.
Right. So,
how do you benefit from that?
Yeah, I'll explain to you. Though we don't get any money, they offload 20 million tons of carbon dioxide by burning this fuel in our vicinity. Sri Lanka as a country, the 22 billion people only emit 20 billion tons of carbon dioxide. So, economy of our size can't take this hit. But this has been impacting our economy, the poor farmers, the tea pluckers, rubber tappers, cinnamon peelers, you name it. All these, the fishermen have been suffering. So, basically, so now we have an asset.
Carbon.
No, that we've been helping the world trade.
Correct, correct.
For decades, and the gain that we have made silently,
yes,
while suffering, is almost, the gain is $100 billion for the last decade. So it's very difficult to compute the impact of pollution on Sri Lanka, because we are a biodiverse, the biggest
hotspot, yes,
and we are priceless. But for want of a better number, if somebody gains 10, obviously we are lost 10, no?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, I'm just keeping it simple.
Oh, for sure, yes.
So we have lost 100 billion, they have gained 100 billion. And the COVID has now come and hit us and put us on the ground. We have no fuel, we have no medicine, we have no fertilizer,
yes,
we have no food. People are down to 2 meals if they had 3, and some are scampering. So we are in need of help,
so what is the suggestion, that they come and pay for this carbon that they emit?
Well, what I'm saying is that the government should be able to use this as a leverage to seek relief. The immediate relief that I'm seeking, trying to see whether it's possible, is to get this bridging finance. And we can't pay the debt. So I'm also talking about a waiver of debt.
Because of this carbon.
Because of
carbon
this
trading
problem.
kind of a mechanism.
And more recently, the UNDP, I think, has recommended to Sri Lanka to try and swap its debt with nature. What they mean by nature is something like this.
Correct.
This is nature. We've been helping nature, and now it's their turn to help us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the government can use my discovery, right, which I have monetized, as leverage to ask for bridging finance and to ask for a waiver of debt. Because you see, the problem is that if you don't ask for a waiver, the interest starts ticking in.
For sure.
You stop paying the money, the taximeter runs. So you need to find a way of stopping that. Otherwise, the debt balloons again.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
So that is my suggestion.
Understood. Mr. Wickramasinghe, we are going to take a short break and come back to you on that. Stay tuned. We will be back after this short break. This is Bisnomics. Welcome back to Bisnomics. I'm Tharandu Amarasekara. Our focus today is on a rescue plan for the economy of Sri Lanka, and we are in conversation with Mr. Ranjith Wickramasinghe. Mr. Wickramasinghe, let's talk about the global export opportunities, because as you said, we don't have enough money to pay our debts, we don't have enough money to meet our expenses, so obviously we need to start, while cutting down some of our expenditure, we also need to start earning more revenue. Yeah. In your viewpoint, what would be the global export opportunities that Sri Lanka could exploit further?
Well, actually now, you see, we on our agriculture side, our basic exports are tea, rubber, and coconut. Now, right at the moment, we are exporting value-added teas as well as from rubber and coconut. Now, I think we need to increase this value-added volume. Say for instance, if your bulk sales are 60, and the value-added now is 30, 70 versus 30, we can quickly increase this 30 to 50, because the value transformation is 6-7-fold. Because it will be very difficult to, for argument's sake, increase the base tea production. But we should try and export more value added. And I think the government should support the tea industry. Come in and support them. You know, I'm sure they know how to do it. They only need help and probably, you know, some kind of financial incentives as well. And that can be got going within months and years. You don't have to, you know, plant the tree. It's already planted. So the same thing can be applied to our coconuts. Now, you know, there's so many multiple uses of coconut, whereas the value addition is terrific.
But we are very happily exporting just the basic commodity.
Well, we have achieved quite a lot on the value addition side, but I think, you know, we need everybody to, you know, support this to get us out of from where we are.
Mr. Wickramasinghe, I don't know whether I'm wrong to think like that, and if I'm wrong, you're most open to and welcome to correct me. Now, we are a country that exports coconut. We have so much of coconut, but in our supermarkets, we have coconut-based cosmetics brought from overseas and sold.
Correct.
Quite a paradox, isn't it?
I know. So, I mean, all these things have to change. Now, the other bigger area is the vegetables and fruits. You know, we have a wide variety, you know, and these are short crops, you know. You can quickly accelerate all those areas.
Correct.
Then the spices. I think we need to make a brand name for Sri Lankan spices, and the government has to come in and help the spice trade. We have the best cinnamon, we have the best pepper.
Correct.
All these other things are really good. So, I mean, you can make a large impact. And then the fishery. We have this 200-mile zone, you know, we need to do deep sea fishing.
Is it true that there is a concern that due to the support given by India, that as a part of the agreement that they had decided to, or rather that they are considering giving access to some of the Indian fishermen to the North Economic Zone? I mean, these can be rumors as well, but has there anything like that been put officially on paper, Mr. Wickramasinghe?
I'm not sure. I'm sure there is a lot of pressure because you are sharing a common area, a narrow common area.
Right.
But, you know, let's leave that. We have the rest of the ocean. So, I mean, let's not fight with India because India is our friend as well, right? But this whole other area down south or in the east, in the west is open. We need to go out, you know, get into joint ventures. You know, we can't do this alone. Get on to joint ventures, not by the government.
Yes, but government should not be getting hands into business. They should facilitate that.
Correct.
Mr. Wickramasinghe, on that same tone and on that same matter, do we see a disconnection by the different government fractions? Because we do see, no matter what sector you take, there is that bureau, this department, that department, this ministry. They have 2 ministers, there is a state minister, etc. There seem to be a lot of groups and people on the job, but the job is not getting done. Does this mean that right now within the government mechanism, there is a lot of disconnection and that things are disjointed between the different parties, and has that contributed to this mess as well?
Of course, very much. So, I mean, you know, ideally, Sri Lanka should have probably 15 ministries. Maximum. So that the coordination is easy. I mean, this is how it functioned, you know, early part of the 70s. You know, we didn't have this. I mean, people are fighting for tables and chairs. I mean, there's no work to distribute among 50 ministers and deputy ministers. We have to, and we have to have a lean and effective structure.
Correct.
So yeah, that's very important. And then of course some of the other things that we can get into is on the minerals. See, we have this ilmenite sand. that can be quickly converted into titanium dioxide. Massive value. Now we can't do that alone. We need to bring in technology and get a joint venture partner. The government does not have to get in, but the private sector can get in, right? And get massive foreign exchange income. Same thing with the graphite.
Graphite, yes. One of some of the best graphite in the world.
Yeah, and if you convert that into graphene, again, your conversion or in terms of value is 10, 15 times. And then I heard that there was another interesting thing that's developing, that Sri Lanka is ideally located for launching of these satellites. You see, we have a empty sea in the southern side. There's no country after Sri Lanka up to the South Pole.
Correct.
So
the Antarctic.
Antarctic, and I understand that our location has the least cost-effective trajectory to launch off a rocket. I mean, at the moment, India is launching a lot of rockets, but they have to do a lot of deviations, right? Because they have to avoid Sri Lanka, right, and the populated areas. So I mean, that's another opportunity, and then we need to look at FDIs. I mean, 2 years ago, the Quad countries, that's USA, Japan, Australia, and India. They are obviously having difficulties with China, and they were trying to move away, right? Whatever production supply networks that they had with China, away from China. I mean, Sri Lanka should go and grab it, and not only that, Sri Lanka should go and invite the Chinese people. To set up
factories
here. I mean, the light assembly type areas.
And those are the opportunities that countries like Laos are actually exploiting.
Correct. And the Hambantota, the harbor, went with 20,000 tons of hinterland. So the land is available. And these can be, put in place in a very short time. So we can earn a lot of foreign exchange with these methods. So my report has specific, so it's a matter of looking at it and fine-tuning it.
Understood. Mr. Wickramasinghe, on a final note, energy seems to be the bane of the economy as well right now, because we are struggling to obtain the basic energy required for our travel, even for the cooking purposes, electricity. This is a major concern. In your view, what can Sri Lanka do to achieve energy security?
Well, I think first of all, I was so sad that the only refinery we had had to be stopped. And that refinery was producing sufficient quantity of kerosene and the LPG gas and so on and so forth, right? We should expand capacity on that and run it. Now, then the other factor is that we have to quickly move over to renewable energy. And I think there are targets set to go into 70% of renewable. So those targets have to be advanced. We can't wait because the sun is burning, it's already there. It's a matter of capturing it. So that has to be done. And the other thing is
what is preventing this coming into light? Is it the corruption? Is it that people who are in some of these authorities don't want renewable energy because they will be losing on commissions and various under the table deals?
Yeah, I'm sure that pressure must be on. But I think the government should be forceful. I mean, this is in the national interest. I mean, you need to talk your way through in all these issues. But of course, if people are not listening to reason, then of course you will have to
take other action.
Other action and carry on.
And this is what leaders like Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore did.
Correct. And then the other thing is that we have finished the exploratory studies with respect to the Mana Basin, the Kaveri Basin. Right, more on the Mana Basin, and we have the third basin called Lanka Basin, where there is oil,
So Sri Lanka does have oil.
I mean, those exploratory research that they have conducted have shown that we have 60 years supply at our current consumption, right? Our current consumption is $4 billion of fuel, for fuel. That we have we can have 60 billion, 60
That's an
years
entire lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about this. Everybody talks, but nothing happens. I mean, as you say, there may be blocks, but I think these blocks have to be removed. Because this is what...
But I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of investors who are interested to invest in oil exploration as well.
I think they floated a tender, they cancelled it. These are usual style. We
the
cannot,
usual U-turn.
Correct.
Two steps forward, 3 steps back.
I mean, you can't do that, I mean, time has come where, everything has to be done properly, transparently. So then of course we can't be, paying for ships, when he arrives here. We must get into long-term contracts, we must buy 1 year supply of crude oil, whatever supply needs for diesel, refined petrol. And I also think that we should start try to find out, because of this foreign exchange crisis, whether we can do a bartering type of agreement with Russia.
Correct.
I mean, Russia is having difficulties.
Yes.
Right? And we are having difficulties.
I think we saw the recent comment from the Prime Minister that he has said we will have to look at going and buying oil from Russia, regardless of what the West is saying. But the truth is, it seems that even the West is actually not quite moving away from Russian energy.
Not quite. And I mean, they can make an exception to us, because we haven't got food. We haven't got fuel. So, whoever is willing to join and take us through, we need to do it.
Absolutely. Mr. Wickramasinghe, it was an absolute pleasure hosting you today in Bisnomics. I only hope and wish that people who are making the decisions would listen to people such as you, the insight, the research you have done, and the insight you have gained, the effort you have put in. And we only hope that those individuals will listen to people like you and make the right decisions and take Sri Lanka to safer shores. Thank you so much for joining us, and wish you good luck.
And thank you very much, Tarindu.
And with that, we wrap up today's episode of Bisnomics. No matter what industry or business you may be in, awareness about the economic condition and what needs to be done to rescue Sri Lanka should be something that you are all aware of. And I hope that the week ahead, with the insight you gained today, will be definitely a profitable one for you. I'm Tarindu, and I will see you with the next episode. This is Bisnomics.